Hey guys, it's Kim. We're back today to talk about Apollyon, which is what Alex is. Poor old evil Alex. Y'all, and that's the OG cover. This is the new cover, which I have to say I don't understand the symbolism of the new cover. I haven't Googled it or anything, but this is the new cover. Because the other ones I've gotten the symbolism of the cover. So, y'all, whew, oh my goodness, this book hurt my feelings. I cried so much. I know y'all watched me cry friggin' talking about Elixir, which was terrible and also hurt my feelings. But yeah, oh my god, this book. So, I love Jennifer Armentrout. I love the series. So, obviously, off the bat, for the whole series, or at least every book in the series is going to be a 5-star. I love it. I love this book. I love the series. So, here's the rub. So, even though I love this book, I love this series, I love Jennifer Armentrout, this is, once I got to a certain point in this book, let's say 90%, I literally was thumbing through Instagram, thumbing through Facebook, let me do anything besides read the rest of this book, because I hate what happens in the end of this book, and it is hard for me to read. And the first time I read this series was 2014 or 2015, and then that scene has stuck with me this entire time. So, just be forewarned that it's rough. Okay, so here's our review, right? I told you it was 5 stars. So, we start off the book, we pick up where Elixir left off. So, we start up, Alex is kind of back to being Seth's Rabbit Raccoon, right? And Aiden is working on her, and she's starting to kind of question some things, which is good, because evil Alex before the Elixir was questioning nothing. So that's good. And we also get visits from people that we've lost, which also happened in Deity. Deity was the last book. So that also happened in Deity. We get the end of evil Alex and the transition into a new and different Alex. So that's one thing I love about this series, and that I love about Jennifer Armentrout's writing in general, is that the character growth and development that you see happen throughout the series. And we have really watched Alex literally grow up and become someone else. And so that continues to happen in Apollyon, in this book. And we see the Scooby Gang, I like to call them the Scooby Gang, training and getting ready for battle. We get to meet some new gods that we haven't met before. We get some deep diving into Alex and Aiden's relationship. We get some nods to Supernatural, which I love. I'm talking about the TV show with Jensen Ackles and Jared Padalecki and Castiel. I don't know his real name, but I guess. Also, Alex and Aiden go to some new places, so the story gets bigger, and y'all know that's another thing that I love. I love when a story's like an onion and it gets bigger, so the story gets bigger. We find out what the gods have planned for Alex and Seth. We also find out who is pulling Lucian and Seth's strings. We get to visit another covenant, and then... And then we have the scene that, like I said, I didn't even want to read. Followed by something that we absolutely need after that scene. So, and I wrote JLA as a freaking Sour Patch Kid. And I stick by that. Because, I don't know if y'all remember the old Sour Patch Kid commercials. But the Sour Patch Kid would literally, cut some little girl's pigtail off. And then hand it back and hug them. I'm sorry. I know it was mean, but I'm sorry. And that's Jennifer. Jennifer's like, oh, I'm sorry I cut your heart out. Here it is. I put it back together with my super special duct tape. My super special Jennifer Armentrout duct tape. So that's the review for Apollyon. Definitely read the series if you have not already. It's YA. It's, I think it's classified as paranormal romance. So that's the review. So that's time for the recap, the spoilers, the nitty gritty. Okay. So I told you before, Alex is evil again. But Seth tells her that he and Lucian were the ones behind the demon attack on the Covenant in New York. The one that Alex was fighting in, that her dad was fighting in, that nearly cost her a lot because of her killing that pureblood guard. So this makes her question things. And when Aiden shows up, because Aiden's still coming down to her cell talking to her, because he just knows, he believes in his heart that he can get her to break the connection, she actually tells Aiden what Seth did. And I think that's our first sign that she's kind of starting to question things and question the connection. So then Caleb shows up, her friend Caleb, that was killed, Pure, I think? I'm not sure. And he tries to talk to her, and he tells her that breaking the bond is the only way to save them both. Like, you know, because Caleb knows, right? If she doesn't break the bond and she goes to connect with Seth, Apollo's going to kill her, right? And then the gods are going to try to kill Seth. So the only way to save them both is for her to break the connection. And then she wakes up in the middle of the night, and Olivia is there. And Olivia was told, just like everybody else, not to go downstairs. But Olivia's like, I just had to see it for myself. And then she's like, Olivia, Caleb came to see me. Come here and let me tell you what he said. And Olivia, like a freaking ding dong, goes walking up to the bars. Oh, okay, evil Alex, tell me what Caleb said. And then what does Alex do but compel her? She compels her to help Alex break out of jail. So like Olivia is pulling from one side while Alex is kicking from the other side, and they finally get the door open. And Alex makes a run for it. And she gets upstairs, and Deacon and Luke see her, and they try to stop her, and she knocks them against the wall with the air element. And then she's running, she's out the door. Aiden is calling her name, like yelling for her. She's booking it. He's like chasing right behind her, and she like uses water from a stream to kind of cut him off. Anyway, he ends up catching up to her. They start fighting. He's like, you can't be out here. They'll come for you. They'll try to kill you. Because, you know, Aiden had wards on the house so that the gods could not get in to where Alex was at. Aiden been trying to keep you alive like this whole time. You just bound and determined you don't care. So she knocks him down and straddles him, and then she says to him, all moments end, St. Delphi, and now yours has. Your love has made you weak. Now, who do you think that's coming from? Alex ain't saying that. Of course, Alex ain't saying none of this crap. It's Seth. Yes. So then Aiden says, this is a quote from Aiden, y'all. Aiden. He says, to love is not weak. Love is the strongest thing there is. So then Alex rears back her hand with Akasha, and she's about to kill him, right? And Seth is in her head saying, do it, kill him, then we can be together, blah, 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 blah. And Aiden reaches up and like puts his hand on her cheek and says, I love you, Alex. I always will. And then the sunlight kind of comes out and catches her, the rose necklace that she's wearing. And she kind of has a thought, right? She has a moment where she's like, wait a minute. And kind of, she had all her memories. It's not like she couldn't remember Aiden, but she didn't have the emotions. And now all of a sudden the emotions are kind of overwhelming her. And this is a quote from Alex. This is what she's thinking. She says, everything was coming undone. Pieces of who I was were repelled by what I'd become. The past and present couldn't coexist with the future. And, you know, she's always said throughout the series that Aiden is her future. When she looks at Aiden, she sees her future. Aiden's her future. Like, she says that. And so that's why this kind of has meaning. Seth is like raging at her inside of her head on the connection. Like, he's giving her a terrible headache. She says it feels like somebody's taking an ice pick to her brain because he is trying to take over. She pictures her shields and puts them up, which basically mutes Seth. And Alex is sobbing, and Aiden is holding her. And they're like having this moment. And then the Furies show up because they're outside the wards. Yeah. And Thanatos shows up, who is the one god, or the order of Thanatos. The people who are under Thanatos can kill her. So the Furies show up, Thanatos shows up. Alex, Aiden, Solus, and Marcus are all fighting Thanatos and the Furies. Then Apollo shows up, and he's like, she broke the bond, you idiot. And then those two start going at it. And so finally, I guess Apollo wins. And Aiden ends up, because Alex gets hit with a god bolt from Thanatos, and so she's not dead, but she's like laying on the ground twitching like she just got tased. And Aiden carries her to the shower, and they clean up, and then they get dirty all over again. The next morning, Alex comes down, like, apologizes to everybody. Olivia punches her. And she's like, it's okay, I deserved it. And then Aiden tells Alex that he banned Apollo with runes because Apollo can kill her, because Alex didn't know this. So they update Alex on everything. She was evil for like a month. And in that time, the world has gone to crap and the gods are extremely angry. So Solus tells them, like, you know, what we should be doing is training. That's what Apollo told us to do, and that's what we should be doing. We should be training. And Solus is a sentinel. Solus and Marcus and Aiden are sentinels, so, of course, training is part of their daily life. It's normal for them. So everybody agrees. They're like, yeah, we should. So LaDawn and Alex are talking, and LaDawn tells Alex that her father was the servant that she kept seeing in New York. And Alex like, why didn't he talk to me? Like, I tried to talk to him and he wouldn't say anything to me. And LaDawn's like, he can't talk because the master's cut his tongue out. Yes. So, well, so then the next day, Marcus and Alex are sitting down talking in the sunroom and kind of having a moment. And Marcus tells her that her dad was a dang good sentinel, and that he was around when she was little. And he was like, if you saw Rochelle and Alex, which is her mama, you saw Alexander, her father. But at one point, he went missing, and everybody just assumed he was dead, that he'd been killed in the line of duty. So then they're all training, even Deacon and LaDawn, and Aiden comes out and kind of sees Deacon and LaDawn training, and he's like, no, we're not doing this. And Deacon, he makes a really good point. He's like, you know, all this is going on. Everybody's doing what they can. And don't ask me to sit by while I watch everybody that I care about fight. So Aiden agrees. I know. So that night, Alex and Leah are talking. And they're kind of having a moment. It's like Alex kind of has all these little moments with each other character to kind of have this resolution, right? And so come to find out, when they're talking, you find out that the whole reason those two had beef to start with was because Leah had a good relationship with her stepmother, or what they called stepmonster. So all the halves, right? Their parents are purebloods married to other purebloods. So they're like the redheaded stepchildren, right? And so most all of them, including Alex, were treated poorly by their pureblood step-parent. Leah was not. Leah's stepmother actually took her places and did things with her and loved her just like her own daughter, Dawn. And so they gave Leah a hard time, and Alex was the ringleader of picking on Leah, and that's why them two have beef. So anyway, her and Leah are talking, and Alex starts getting this really bad headache, and then she passes out, and she wakes up in a chamber with Seth. Hermes, who, you know, like the Fleetfoot dude with the special helmet. I don't really know much about Greek gods, but Hermes has pulled her into this chamber, and he's like, don't shoot the messenger, don't be mad at me. And so Seth tells her that they're still connected, and that he can still reach her if she's tired or hurt. Basically anything that would make her shields weak, he can still get to her. And she asks him again to stop. She's like, Seth, just stop what you're doing. And he's not hearing it because he has full-on drunk Kool-Aid, okay? And she wakes up to Aiden and tells him what happened. And Alex has to have a little, like, heart-to-heart, a little come-to-Jesus meeting with Aiden, because Aiden has been acting really weird and kind of distancing himself from Alex. And she's like, what is up? What is going on with you? And it comes out that basically he's overwhelmed with guilt from putting her on the elixir. Because, and you can understand this, because this was one of her greatest fears, right? And Aiden was the one to perpetrate her greatest fear on her. And then Aiden was the one to say the words to make him her master. So he is like, eat up inside, okay? And she basically tells him, Aiden, you got to pull your head out of your hind parts, because I need you. I need you right now. Like, the world is going to crap. We're the ones who have to save it, and I need you. And she's like, if I have to get over all the terrible things that I said and did when I was under the, if I have to get over all the terrible things I said and did when I was evil Alex, you need to get over putting me on the elixir, basically. So Apollo shows up the next day because the wards have faded, because they fade over time. And he gives Alex a medallion made from Hermes' helmet, which kind of explains why Hermes helped Seth, that helps hide her energy from the gods so that she can leave the house and they won't be able to feel her or find her or whatever. So they're all trying to figure out how to stop Seth. And Alex is like, well, if I could talk to Solaris, that would help. And Apollo's like, maybe you can. You just pop on down to the underworld and go talk to her. So they plan for Alex and Aiden to go to the underworld. Apollo draws them a map and kind of tells them what to expect. And they leave the next day for, wait for it, Stull Cemetery in Kansas. Yes, that is a nod to Supernatural. Because in Supernatural, like, the first or second season, pretty early on, they have to go to Stull Cemetery, which is the gateway to hell. And I think their dad shows up, which is, all I know is he's Negan. And he's beautiful. Anyway, that's Supernatural. So they have to face three challenges. And the first one is they have to face skeletons in robes. Then they have to face the hellhound. And then the third test, which is the worst one, they have to face their parents. So Alex has to face her mother, and her mother is telling her terrible things, like telling her it's her fault that she died, it's her fault she turned into a demon. I mean, just terrible things. And then Aiden, and she has to kill her mother. And then Aiden has to face his parents, who are also telling him terrible things, like he's not, he's left Deacon unprotected, and something's going to happen to Deacon. It's going to be all his fault. He should be ashamed of himself for taking advantage of Alex. Just terrible, horrible things. And so he has to kill his parents. And so they realize that these shades or whatever weren't their actual relatives. They were basically telling Alex and Aiden their most terrible thoughts about themselves. Yeah. So, yeah, it's like some inner, a window to your own soul. So they go through the gate and through a portal, and they end up in asphodel fields where people are just kind of like shuffling and depressed and aimless, and pop out to the real world and pop back, and they're just kind of So then they're walking, and Alex sees some pomegranates, and Alex, who doesn't pay attention in school, goes to reach for the pomegranates, and Aiden has to grab her arm and is like, no, don't you know about Persephone? It's like, if you eat anything here, you have to stay here, you're stuck here. So they're climbing the hills, trying to get to the tunnels before dark, because Apollo told them you don't want to be out when it gets dark, and it's starting to get dark. And so what happens, but they get swarmed by a bunch of spiders, like big, gigantic spiders, like the size of a small car. Spiders, yes. So they're fighting the spiders. They end up having to use the fire element to get to the tunnels. They finally get to the tunnels. I mean, can we just for a moment, y'all, just for a moment, okay? Like, I mean, I think I kind of realized this on the first read, but on this reread, it has really just like hammered into my brain that everything that Alex has suffered and gone through and has to go through is like a Greek tragedy, right? Oh, I'm about to knock over my tablet. It's like the Odyssey. It's like Troy, right? Like the hero always has to walk through all these trials and tribulations and suffer, right? And then it may not even work out in the end, right? That's why they're Greek tragedies. But I'm just saying, like, the similarities, the genius that is Jennifer Armentrout, that she writes this contemporary young adult paranormal romance that's about Greek gods and Greek mythology, and also has the feel of authentic ancient Greek tragedies. Okay. So, I love Jennifer Armentrout. Okay. So they walk until they get to the tunnels, and they walk until they get to to a cavern. And it's, you know, kind of this like circular cavern. And there's actually like a hot spring with a pool, and that smells like jasmine. And while Aiden is going to check the entrance to make sure that no spiders get through, Alex just goes on and strips down and gets in the pool. So when Aiden comes back, he joins her, and then they join together in the hot springs. So they take turns keeping watch. I think Alex sleeps first, and then she gets up so Aiden can sleep. And while Aiden's sleeping, Seth talks to Alex through the bond, and he tells her that he cares about her, but it would never work between them because he would only ever get her leftovers. Whatever feelings she had left over from Aiden is what he would get. And she asks him to stop what he's doing. She offers to help him. She's like, you know, I can help you. And he's like, he gets mad. He's like, I don't need your help. I don't need help from anyone. And he's like, you know, Lucian actually cares about you. He cares about the world. He cares about halves in the world. And she's like, no, you know, because he's like, you know, I deserve to be loved. She's like, yes, you do deserve to be loved. You are worthy of love. But Lucian does not love you. He's using you. And he tells her, well, in the end, I'm going to get what I want, and breaks the connection. So when Aiden wakes up, she tells him about Seth, and they make it to the Veil of Morning, which is even more depressing than Asphodel Fields. And they leave there, and they're walking with a crowd of people that are heading towards the Plane of Judgment when Caleb finds them. And he goes to lead them wherever they need to go, and then they're surrounded by 4 guards. Yes. You're like, son of a biscuit, like... They made it through the freaking spiders, and then they made it through their first night in the underworld, and now they get busted by the guards. So they take them to the palace, and then when they get to the throne room, it's actually Persephone that comes in, and Caleb tells them what they're doing and what they need. She's like, oh, okay, well, come with me then. So she takes them to Hades' war room, which is full of Ares war trophies, which is like the heads of mythical creatures that he's hunted down, and a bunch of ponytails. And P, I just call her P because Persephone's like, so P tells them that Ares likes to keep trophies of his conquest and that he can't keep them in Olympus, so Hades lets him keep them there. And Alice just keeps getting this really weird feeling looking at the ponytails, okay? So P calls forth a basin that's filled with red water that looks like blood, and tells Alex she can call any soul she wants to, but she can only use it once. And so she calls Solaris, and Solaris comes, and she asks her, you know, is your first, she's like, you're the Apollyon, and Alex says, yeah, and she says, is your first like mine? And Alex says, yeah, and Solaris is like, well, then there's nothing we can do. Like, he's lost to the ether. There's nothing we can do. And Alex is like, that's not true. I saw it. And Solaris is like, well, I hid that memory. Because apparently whenever the Apollyons die, you kind of pick which memory you are going to send to the other Apollyons. So Solaris is like, how did you see that? I hid that memory. So how did you see it? And she's like, you know, it must be fate for you to see it. And so she tells Alex that when when her first drew her power, there was a moment of vulnerability like an Achilles heel. And that's when the Order attacked. So he had to draw her power first. And as soon as he drew her power, I guess like he was kind of weak on the ether like a demon. And that's when the Order attacked before he could actually use said power. So she tells Alex what to do to draw the power herself. She tells her to touch each of the marks in the order they appeared and say the names. And that's how she can take the power, but so can Seth. So Solaris tells her, like, so low that only she can hear. She's like, you know, even if you succeed, even if this works, A, the power could warp you and turn you into something else. And B, after you serve the God's purpose, do you really think they're going to let you live? Do you really think that they're going to let the God killer walk the face of the earth? So then Solaris leaves, and Alex and Caleb are talking for a while, and he asks her not to tell Olivia that she saw him because he wants Olivia to be able to move on. Pete opens a portal to send them back to Stull, and on the way back to Illinois, I think is where they're at, Apollo appears in the back seat, and they about have a wreck because he just pops in. And, Aiden's like, you need a freaking bell. He tells them everyone who's not on Team Seth and Lucian is heading for the Covenant in South Dakota. So when they get back, Alex tells Aiden to go on inside so she can talk to Apollo. She tells him she's like, I knew something was up, because why wouldn't you just kill me? Or when Leonard killed me, why wouldn't you just let me stay dead? Because then that solves the Seth problem, because Seth doesn't become the God killer. Like, why? I wonder why you were keeping me alive. And she's like, you need me to kill the God responsible. And Apollo tells her, yes, that's the preference. That's what they want. That's what the gods want. But if it looks like Seth is going to take her power, that she just should kill Seth. She says, yeah, and then after I've done what the gods want, you've probably got an order member stashed somewhere to take me out. And he doesn't deny it. He just says, well, Alex, everybody dies, and it's about what you're willing to die for. So he tells her she'll have a warrior's death and she'll want for nothing. And she asks him to make sure that Aiden, Marcus, and the rest are okay. And he says he will. And she says she doesn't want Aiden to have to see her body afterwards because he saw his parents. And Apollo says he'll take care of it. So she asks him to leave so she can kind of have a moment to herself, because hello, like, you're sitting there having to digest the fact that you're going to have to fight Seth, who you do care about regardless, take his power, which is going to destroy him, become the God killer, face off with a god, and then afterwards, what do you get as a reward for doing all of this? You get killed. That's what you get. So Aiden comes outside looking for her. And he's like, what's up? What's going on? And she's like, oh, nothing. I'm just thinking about everything with Seth. And he tells her, Alex, don't forget, we're in this together to the end. Aiden is so perfect. And she doesn't want to tell him because she doesn't want to burden Aiden. So the next day, Apollo shows up with Dionysus. And he lets them know that he couldn't get close to the encampment, that, somebody was blocking him. And he's like, it has to be a god. And it can't be just any old god. It must be one of the core. And he explains that the core are the most powerful gods, and that there's a hierarchy. So it's Zeus and Hera, Apollo and Artemis, Ares and Athena, and Hades and Poseidon. He's like, it must be one of those 8. And D tells them that they've got 1,000 pures, or 1,000 halves, 1,000 half-blood like sentinels and guards, plus they've got an inner circle of pures, and they've got about 500 mortal soldiers. So they decide to go to the Covenant in South Dakota, and Alex is like, I don't want anybody putting their lives at risk. This is, I would never ask that. And Marcus just kind of tells her, basically, get over herself. This isn't all about you, Alex. Everybody here has made the choice that they're willing to risk their lives to fight for the greater good. And he also tells her, I love Marcus so much, y'all, in these last 2 books. So he also tells her, you're not in this alone. You never were. So the next morning, Alex and Aiden are talking. And he tells her that, that he knows that she's scared. So is he. He's scared about losing more people. He's scared about Deacon. He's scared about what's going to happen to Alex. And that he knows that a part of her loves Seth, and it's going to be really hard for her to do what she has to do. And Alex is actually thinking about, she's like, well, if I kill Seth and don't take his power, then I get to stay alive, because I'm not the God killer. So Alex is, thinking about alternatives. And Deacon busts in, and Aiden goes to get in the shower, and Deacon tells her, he's like, look, I know what somebody looks like when they're ready to die, because I've been there, and you've got that look, and please don't, because, it would destroy my brother. And it's like, oh, Deacon. So that's what I'm saying, you have all these little moments. So they all head out for South Dakota, and when they're about 4 hours away, they realize they're being followed, so they pull off the interstate, right, pull off on an exit. And the people are shooting at them. And Alex realizes, they know they can't kill Alex. So they're willing to kill everybody else around Alex to get to Alex. So Alex is like, pull the car over. So she hits the first Hummer with the air element and it goes flipping. And then they fight the Sentinels from the second Hummer. And then by the time they get rid of those Sentinels, the Sentinels from the first Hummer are on them. So they're fighting them. And then they get them fighting. Solos has 2 Sentinels on their knees. And they're trying to figure out what's going on, where Seth is, who's the god they're working with, all this stuff, right? So the Sentinels tell them that it's bigger. They tell Alex, they're like, girl, nobody cares about you. Nobody cares about Seth. Nobody cares about Lucian and his council. Like, this is way bigger than all y'all. And they're basically to figure out that they're loyal to whatever god is pulling the strings. So Aiden kills them. And then when they get like 5 miles out from the university, from the Covenant, there's like burnt cars and trees everywhere. It's like some post-apocalyptic landscape. And they get to the point where they can't drive any further because the road is so clogged up. So they get out to hoof it. And they notice one of the vehicles has New York tags. And they're like, oh crap. These were people who were trying to get to safety and they were attacked. What's going on? We need to get out of here. And about that time, the fireballs start raining down in the sky. It's the freaking automatons, whatever. The robot centaur fire breathing monster show up. They're fighting them. It's not going well because these things are hard to kill. You either have to shoot them in the back of the head or cut their head off. And this is a giant robot, so that's not the easiest thing to do. So it's not going well. And Alex realizes if she does not do something, they are all going to die. So she starts using Akasha, and she is taking out freaking robot bull people left and right, okay? But then she runs out of juice, because that's the thing, right? Is that she's, first of all, she's the second Apollyon, so she's not as strong as Seth. And even if it was Seth, he would have to draw off of Alex to not run out of juice. So Alex runs out of juice. Marcus, Aiden, and Leah take out the rest. Then Leah comes to help Alex up. And when she bends down to help Alex up, one of the freaking robot centaur things snaps her neck. Comes up behind her and snaps her neck. Alex is holding her. Aiden comes over and whispers a prayer in Greek. And Alex just walks off. She's like, because she's just so sick of losing people. You know what I'm saying? And she just walks off, and Seth is on the connection, like asking her, what's going on? Alex, tell me what's going on. I feel your emotions. What's going on? And she's like, are you happy? Is this what you wanted? And then he like whispers sorry and then leaves her alone. And they pick a spot. Olivia and Alex kind of pick a spot to bury Leah. And Alex uses the earth element to make a grave, and then she's worn out again because she was already out of juice to start with. So they wrap Leah up in a blanket and say a prayer, and LaDawn has a gold coin necklace. And so Marcus pulls some of the coins off of LaDawn's necklace and puts it in Leah's hand for passage for Sharon. Then they get to the Covenant, but they don't see anybody. Like, it looks like there's been a battle, though. Like, some of the walls are damaged. And so Marcus calls out. He's like, hello, anybody home? And the next thing you know, they're surrounded with guns pointed in their face. And Alex has to tell them that she's the Apollyon, the good Apollyon. She's like, I'm the good one. And she's like, first of all, you can't kill me. But if you kill my friends, like, you're going to piss me, the Apollyon, off. You're going to piss off the gods that I'm working for. And you're going to piss off Apollo that I'm related to. So maybe don't shoot us. So they let him in, and they take him to the dean's office, which is Dean Elders. His sister, Councilwoman Diana Elders, is the one that was the swing vote to keep Alex from being put on the elixir. And so she's there too, and they're all talking. Apparently Marcus and Diana have a little thing going on. So they tell him everything, and he tells them he'll arrange for them to meet with the Sentinels, because they're like, we need an army. And he's like, well, I'll arrange for you to meet with everybody, and anybody who wants to volunteer to help you can, but I'm not going to force anybody to join your army. So they're like, okay, that's cool. And Diana asks about Seth, and Alex is like trying to deflect, right? Because she has not told anybody what's going to happen. And Diana just keeps pushing. So Alex finally tells them that the gods want her to take out whatever god is responsible for this. And Aiden is like, What'd you say? So they get escorted to the dorms. And Aiden grabs her and pulls her to a room and says, as soon as I get out of the shower, we are talking. And Alex kind of turns around and looks at Olivia like, help. And Olivia's like, I mean, you need to talk to him. So, he's mad. He's very mad. So, he's mad because he knows the kind of trouble that could lead to, right? And she still doesn't tell him that she's going to die when this is over with. So, the next morning, one of the sentinels, I mean, they talk and like it's okay, but he's like, Alex, we don't need to keep secrets from each other. And she's like, no, but she still didn't tell him. So the next morning, one of the sentinels is knocking on the door and tells him that somebody has come to the campus who survived Deity Island. So Alex, Aiden, and Marcus head for the dean's office, and inside is none other than instructor Romvi. Yeah. Instructor Romvi was the one that was so nasty to her and had Jackson beat her face in with his boot and is a member of the Order of Thanatos. So Aiden and Marcus are like already kind of on edge when they see Romvi. Alex is like having really bad anxiety and getting this weird feeling, the same weird feeling she got in Hades' war room. And her marks are going crazy and she doesn't know what it means. So then she figures it out. It clicks because he says something about people shouldn't turn their back on war, and it clicks. And she throws the dagger, which embeds in his chest, and he laughs. And then he turns into Ares. Yeah. And she's like, what do you want? And he says, everything. And to get everything, I need you to connect with the first. She's like, you can't kill me. And he's like, no, but I can kill everyone you love, and starts like killing everybody in the room. So Alex uses the air element to push Aiden and Marcus out the door and lock it. And this is the part that tears my nerves up. Okay. So Ares wants to know what she was doing in the underworld, and if she doesn't tell him, she's going to beg for death. She's going to wish for death. And he tells her, he's like, I'll make you a deal. If you connect with Seth and give me what I want, you will be taken care of. You will want for nothing. And I'll even let everybody that you love live. She's like, well, what about all the other gods and the millions of other people? And he's like, consequences of war. So she realizes then that he can't force her to connect with Seth. She has to be willing to do it. So they start fighting. He picks her up by the throat. And before she can summon Akasha, because you're reading this and you're like, girl, just hit him with Akasha. And she thinks about it. I mean, it's hard, right? Because she realizes she's got to fight a god. And so she's kind of in panic mode. But she goes to summon Akasha. But before she can do it, he throws her into the aquarium, which then shatters. And she's got glass everywhere. And she starts crawling across the glass to get up, and he hits her across the face. And then when she starts to summon Akasha again, he grabs her and like breaks her spine on the edge of the desk, so that now that she's paralyzed. So when you think that someone is paralyzed, you think that they have no feeling, but that is not necessarily true. So you have sensory nerves, which feel things, right? And then you have motor nerves, which move things, right? So you can have damage to your motor nerves where you can't move them, but you can still feel things, right? So Alex is paralyzed, but can feel everything that's happening to her. So he's like, he gets in her face and he's like, say the words and it ends now. Because she's already in pain. Because even if you're paralyzed, you can still have pain. And she says, F you. So he starts breaking every bone in her body, one by one. And then, after he breaks all her bones, he starts cutting her up with a dagger. About that time, Aiden and Marcus are on the other side of the door. So they can hear everything that's happening, right? So imagine Aiden On the other side of the door, here's a trained sentinel, a pureblood, listening to the woman that he loves be broken to pieces by Ares. So Aiden and Marcus break the door down and start fighting Ares. Alex is like out of it, but still kind of freaking out because she knows that Ares will kill Aiden and Marcus and won't think twice about it. And then there's a flash of light, and then somebody says, "Let go, Alex," and she passes out. When she wakes up, she can't feel the cord, her connection with Seth, and there's a man speaking to her, and it's Thanatos, and she's like, "Man, I can't catch a freaking break," because Thanatos tried to kill her before in the clearing in Illinois, yeah. And he tells her, he's like, "Look, I know we were enemies before, but we're not now. I'm just keeping you safe until Apollo can get back with his son Asclepius." He tells her that she's in Olympus or close to it. Apollo shows up with his son, Asclepius, who heals her, and there's more pain because he's like, "This might burn," and she says she feels like she's being lit on fire from the inside out. And he says there's something else here, and then Alex is out again. And then she wakes up again in a bed, and she's just, Alex, oh God. She's filled with shame because she did want to die. She did beg for death. And she knows that Seth and Ares know it. So she's kind of, she goes to get up, but she can't because she's just filled with fear and shame. And she ends up like balled up in a corner on the floor. And her mom comes in and holds her. I know. She tells her that Apollo thought it would help her if she saw her mom. And Alex like starts apologizing. And she's like, "Baby, no, you know, don't you dare." It's just so sweet. And you need it because, oh my God. Okay. So she's like, "Don't you dare. Miami was not your fault. And Gatlinburg, you actually gave me peace. So don't you dare apologize." And then she tells her like how much she loves her and how proud she is of her. And how happy she is that she found Aiden. And it's just like, oh, like this beautiful moment with her mom. And then her mom, sorry y'all, I just, whew, gives her a drink that Asclepius made to help her heal. And her mom tells her, like, it's going to make you go to sleep. It's going to help you heal. And she tells her, she's like, "Alex, just please promise me that you will let go of the guilt and you will let go of what Ares did to you." Because she knows, like, if she don't, like, you know, she's not going to be able to do what she needs to do. And then that's the end of the book. Oh, you guys. Oh, my God. Whew. Whew. And then I had to go ahead and flip to the next one because I needed some kind of like, everything gonna be all right after all that. So that is Apollyon. And the next one, aka the last one in the Covenant series, is Sentinel. So we'll be talking about that one next. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.